Hey guys, did you see this? It looks like the wild animal got into our tent and ate all of our popcorn. Or it could have just been my dog. Anywho, since tonight is our last night in the tent, I thought we could spend a few minutes and read the first chapter of another Hoopla book that I downloaded. And tonight I've got a great one for you. It's called Posted, and it is written by John David Anderson. So I don't know if you can see that. There you go. That's what the cover looks like. And if you've ever noticed, in the front of a lot of books, the author usually has a dedication, usually to someone that he knows, someone special, someone maybe that helped him or her out while they were writing. A lot of times it's a family member. The author of this book decided to dedicate it for those who have something to say. I thought that sounded kind of nice. He also included a quote by the famous poet Robert Frost. And this is what Robert Frost had to say. Half the world is composed of people who have something to say and can't, and the other half who have nothing to say and keep on saying it. That is some deep words to think about, isn't it? Well, let's go ahead and read a little bit of the book. I'm going to start with the prologue and read most of the first chapter, and we'll see what you think. So why don't we get cozy? I'm going to turn our light off here, and I'm going to get in my sleeping bag. So if you want to get in your sleeping bags and get cozy, you can do that now. And let's start with the prologue of Posted. I push my way through the buzzing mob and freeze, heart-struck, dizzy. It takes me a minute to really get what I'm looking at. Notes, at least 100 of them, pressed all over the freshly painted locker. Some clump together, overlapping like roof shingles. Others orbit like satellites, reaching up towards the wall. They vary in color, pale blue, fluorescent pink, lime green, but most of them are yellow, like dandelions before they fluff white and wither away. I stand motionless and read a few of them, softly enough so only I can hear. They are just words, and they are not just words. I think about everything that's happened, about Bench and Dee Dee and Rose and Wolf, about all the terrible things that were said, about the things that should have been said and weren't. There was a war. This was where it ended. I can't tell you exactly when it changed, when it spiraled out of control like a kite twisting in the wind, when it stopped being something funny and clever and became something else. Maybe there was no single moment. Maybe underneath all the squares plastered on the walls and the notebooks and the windows, there was the same message over and over. We just ignored it because it was easier to stomach. And now I'm standing here, dumbstruck, wondering if this changes everything. I know what you're going to say. Sticks, stones, and broken bones, but words can't kick you in the gut. They wriggle underneath your skin and start to itch. They set their hooks into you and pull. Words accumulate like a cancer, and then they eat away at you until there is nothing left. And once they are let loose, there really is no taking them back. Truth is, I can't tell you exactly when it changed. I can tell you how it started, though, and I can tell you how it ended. I will do my best to line up the dots in between. I'll leave it to you to draw the line. Chapter 1, The Catalyst. It started with Ruby Sandals. That's her name, swear to God. Ruby freaking Sandals. Yes, sandals aren't slippers, which would have been worse, and it's not even spelled the same, but it still counts as a form of child abuse, IMO. Might as well just fix her black hair into a permanent ponytail, buy her a shaggy terrier to stuff in a wicker basket, and teach her to sing about rainbows. I'm sure her parents thought they were being cute with that name. But a thing like that could mess a kid up for life. It didn't, though. Mess her up for life, that is. But only because Ruby looked nothing like a lost farm girl from Kansas. With her dark brown skin and tight jeans, Ruby was no Dorothy, and she was hard-nosed enough to stare down anyone who even thought about teasing her, which was always somebody. This was middle school. Everybody got teased by somebody sometime about something. And the very least, Ruby would give double back what she got. And you had to admire that. Don't get the wrong idea. Ruby and I weren't friends. I will just say that up front. In fact, you can just assume that anyone I talk about isn't a friend of mine, unless explicitly stated otherwise. Ruby was just a girl who sat in front of me in math class and ignored me out of habit. She had a backpack covered in faux sapphires. You didn't have to look close to tell the dark blue stones weren't real. This is Branton, not Beverly Hills. Anything flashy around here is fake. That's Branton, Michigan, by the way. Don't try to find it on a map. You'd need a microscope. It's one of a dozen dinky towns north of Lansing, one of the few that doesn't sound like it was named by a French explorer. Branton, Michigan, population not a lot, and yet still too many I don't particularly care for. We have a shopping mall with a JCPenney and an Asian fusion place that everyone says they're just dying to try, even though it's been there for 3 years now. Most of our other restaurants are attached to gas stations, the kind that serve rubbery purple hot dogs and sodas in buckets. All right, I'm just going to stop there because if this was really in Michigan, they wouldn't be saying sodas, they'd be saying pops, but we'll ignore it. There's a statue of Francis B. Stockbridge in the center of town. He's a Michigan state senator from prehistoric times with a beard that belongs on Rapunzel's twin brother. He wasn't born in Branton, of course. Nobody important was ever born in Branton. But we needed a statue for the front of the courthouse, and the name Stockbridge looks good on a copper plate. It's all for show. Branton's the kind of place that tries to pretend it's better than it really is. It's really the kind of place with more bars than bookstores and more churches than either. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's a place where teenagers still sometimes take baseball bats to mailboxes, and wearing the wrong brand of shoes gets you at least a dirty look. It snows a lot in Branton, like avalanches dumped from the sky. Like heaps to hills to mountains, the plows carving their paths through our neighborhood, creating alpine ranges nearly tall enough to ski down. Some of the snow mounds are so big you can build houses inside of them, complete with entryways and coat closets. Restrooms are down the hall on your right, just look for the steaming yellow hole. There's nothing like that first Branton snow, though. Soft as cat scruff and bleach white, so bright you can almost see your reflection in it. Then the plows come and churn up the earth underneath. The dirt and the boot tracks and the car exhaust mix together to make it all ash gray, almost black, and it sickens your stomach just to look at it. It happens everywhere, not just Branton, but here it's something you can count on. But I was telling you about how it started. The band and the notes, and then the war that followed. I was telling you about Ruby Sandals getting into trouble. Getting us all into trouble. Also, just so you know, this isn't Ruby's story. She's what my chemistry teacher calls a catalyst, something that jump-starts a reaction. The thing about Ruby, like pretty much every other kid in Branton Middle School, me being one exception, is that she was never without her phone, despite the rule against having them out in class. Nobody followed that rule. If the teacher's back was turned, texts, tweets, and ticked-off birds were flying. Videos were being downloaded, villages were being raided, and walls were being posted on. Everyone did it. And if I was lucky enough to have a phone, if it ever fit into the budget, I would have done it too. Which is why it wasn't unusual to see Ruby taking furtive glances at her lap during class. The problem was, on this day, she decided to do it in math with Ms. Shears. Unlike Ruby, don't ever call me Dorothy Sandals, Ms. Shears lived up to her name. Sharp as a scalpel, with thin lips and dagger eyes, Nothing seemed to escape her. She wasn't like Mr. Hostler, nearsighted and 3 years from retirement, only really concerned with getting home and finding out who won Dancing with the Stars. You could come to class newborn naked, and Mr. Hostler would probably just sigh and check you off the attendance sheet. Ms. Shears, on the other hand, was a bloodhound. That didn't make her a bad teacher necessarily, but she wasn't the sort to look the other way when she saw the flash of light glinting off Ruby's phone, or heard the nearly imperceptible click of Ruby's painted nails on the screen. She zeroed in on the desk like a sniper, then snapped her fingers and opened her hand. "Let's have it." "Have what?" "The phone, Ruby." "I don't have a phone," Ruby said, sounding suddenly Dorothy-like, all innocent as she attempted to slide the phone she didn't have into her glitzy bag. It caught the edge of the pocket and clattered much too loudly to the ground. Naturally, this was hilarious, at least to everyone but Ms. Shears, who shot down the aisle and reached for it, hawk-like, snatching it out from underneath Ruby's fingertips. "Give me my phone back," Ruby said, her face suddenly flushed, lunging upward as Ms. Shears held it out of her reach. "You don't have a phone," Ms. Shears reminded her. She looked at Ruby's screen, and her expression changed, Jekyll to Hyde. If it was possible for a teacher to be pretty, Ms. Shears might qualify. But when she looked at the screen, her face transformed into something pinched and contorted, like she had just taken a swallow of rancid milk. She looked from the phone to Ruby, then back to the phone. Ruby's eyes fell to her desk, head dropping so fast you would have thought someone had tied an anchor to her chin. "Is this," Ms. Shears stammered, did you?" Judging by the lack of response, the rest of us could only assume it was, and she did. About a half-dozen students, me included, telescoped our necks to get a look at the screen, but Ms. Shears pressed the phone close to her chest. We all turned and looked expectantly at Ruby, waiting for her comeback. Sarcastic or apologetic, it could go either way. I found that kids will apologize instantly if they think that it will keep them out of trouble. I know I will. But there are some times you just know an apology, even one you actually mean, won't be enough. Then it's best to just keep your mouth shut. I'm guessing that's what Ruby Sandals was thinking, because she didn't say a word at first, just blushed and refused to look up. Ms. Shears took a deep breath. "You understand, we need to go see Mr. Whittingham." Low murmurs among the class. The big ham, Principal Whittingham, was even more hardcore than Ms. Shears. You could sometimes feel the tremors when he shouted at a kid from behind his office door. Ruby's head snapped up. "But Miss Shears, I didn't mean anything by it. It's just talk." She knew she was in it deep. I suddenly felt bad for her. Ms. Shears had her Gorgon stare on, turn you straight to stone, the phone still pressed to her heart. "This isn't a game, Ruby. It's one thing to violate school policy and use your phone in class, but this?" Ms. Shears looked at the phone again, as if to confirm that what she'd seen the first time wasn't a trick of her imagination. Her face nodded up again, and she shook her head. "This is inexcusable." Which meant that whatever it was, it must have been good. Ruby Sandals groaned and angrily stuffed her notebook into her backpack. Then we watched her be escorted to the front door. "I will be back in 2 minutes, Ms. Shears warned. Take this opportunity to complete the problems on your sheet." Silently. We all nodded meekly. Ms. Shears closed the door, and at least 20 other phones flew out of pockets and backpacks as we all tried to figure out just what it was that Ruby had done, the wonderfully terrible things that she'd said. Behind me, Jasmine Jones squealed and clasped her hand over her mouth. She showed her phone to Samantha Bowles. Not Bowles, I made that mistake once. only once. Oh no, she didn't, Samantha said, eyes wide. Apparently, yes, she did. And we were all about to pay for it. So, that is about half of the first chapter of Posted. If you are interested in reading the rest of this book, like I said, you can download it on the Hoopla app as soon as you can. It's always available when it's on Hoopla. Or if you have the opportunity to come into the library now that we're open for grab and go, we have the physical copy of this book too. You can check it out and read what happens to Ruby and to our narrator and the rest of the kids at Branton Middle School. So I want to thank you guys all for joining me on this camping adventure, and look forward in the fall. I will be doing more first chapters, but for now I'm just going to say bye from the tent. Take care.